Hi, welcome back. We are now in Module 4, building the integrity that your customers deserve and will appreciate you for. That will come, that will become your best friends. But before we dig into Module 4, let's recap a little bit what we covered so far. In Module 1, we talked about how to protect and preserve your capital now because we have different forces, inflationary and deflationary forces. The main inflationary forces are the currency debasement, the quantitative easing, or digital printing of money and putting more debt into the monetary world, which means your money becomes worth less. The money on your bank account becomes worth less because of the additional printing of money into existence by the central banks worldwide. And this means you need to protect yourself against that. You have many ways to do that. Some of them are putting your money in hard assets like real estate, but I wouldn't go with commercial real estate, and residential real estate has been topping out already. So personally, I go more into precious metals, but also in a new technology called blockchain technology. The most famous coin there, or you heard about, is Bitcoin, but there are thousands other coins with thousands of different applications. So that's for the inflationary part. The other part is the deflationary forces. Deflationary is when suddenly, for example, a bank goes bankrupt, but instead of bailing the bank out, which is with additional money being created, we have now a legal framework both in the US, the UK, as in Europe, which allows banks or governments to take the money from the creditors, which is you as a depositor or a creditor of the bank. And that's a way to lose, maybe like in Cyprus, up to 50% or something like that of the money that you have in your savings or current account. You don't want that, so that's why I would recommend not to keep too much money. I don't recommend it, but that's what I'm doing. Don't keep too much money on your banking accounts. Put them out of harm's way. Look into different other assets or a new asset class like blockchain, or a very old one, which is precious metals. Then, in order to gain, now that we are protected a little bit, then we can focus on what matters in our company. And in order to do that, we must look what we do now with our company. If we don't have enough customers or the economy is contracting, then the standard knee-jerk reaction is to go in a state of fear, contraction, and start to focus on cost efficiency, utilizations. Basically, it's downsizing, right-sizing, deciding who to lay off. And then when you've laid off enough, or you think you have laid off enough, then what to do? Because you may have now cut not only in the bones, in the fat, but also in the bones, the structure of your company, and you may not be able to cope with a revival of the economy, or a revival at least of the demand for your products. So here I recommend to have a holistic approach and to focus on the revenue side, because there's where the customer resides. Customer doesn't care too much about your efforts and your costs. They care a lot about the service and the quality that you offer, and the reliability and speed with which you can do that. So when we've got different choices, we basically have four choices. One is to have a new product on an existing market that we're already serving. We also can use an existing product and go to a different market, or we can do a combination of both, a new product and a new market. But obviously, that last one is the highest risk, with the highest uncertainty, with the highest cost involved. So before we go to new product, new markets, or new product and new markets, why not focus on improving our current product, project, or service towards the market, and make it a factor of magnitude better than our competitors, so we can sail the blue ocean and don't need to stay in the red ocean of price competition, where everybody in the end loses, except those those maybe with unlimited access to capital. But if you are not one of those, I recommend you to focus on the customer. What is their need that if we would fulfill it in a factor of magnitude better way than our competitors, we can gain all the market share there is, because people will be willing to pay for the value that you bring. So that's how we come to module 3, where we will build a Mafia offer, an offer which is basically irresistible to your customers, and your competitor finds hard or even impossible to copy. It will take them years, because there's some reasoning behind, there's some true collaboration and empathy behind it, because you put yourselves really in the place of your customer and you see what is our sector actually providing to our customer, which they don't want. What is really annoying our customers in our sector so much that if we could solve it, they will flock to our business. And you develop that offer, and you give a guarantee that you can make that offer work. But if you do that before launching the offer, you need to make sure that you will not become the victim of your own success. And that's leading us into module 4, where we will build the integrity in order not to be a victim of our own success. After that, we'll cover selling our Mafia offer and killing the engines of disharmony in the last module for good. The engines of disharmony, I will go into that once we get there. But now let's dig into module 4, building the integrity. This is a picture of a company where I was in Norway, and this is when we arrived, day 1. It was like, I think, about 10 or 12 software developers, and that's where they are. And yeah, now we needed to improve the performance of their IT department. Obviously, the problem here, the first problem you may notice, is it's hard to see where is the work in the process from order intake to customer delivery. How do you manage this? Because in a manufacturing company, you can see piles of inventory in front of machines. You can see the flow. It's all very visible, or at least much more visible than in an IT sector. So the first thing you need to do in a focused leverage improvement project, hence my name of my company, Flip Management, is to visualize the system. So first of all, you need to decide what kind of system you're looking at, and which one do you want to improve. So the first thing is to set the boundaries of, is it the business unit or is it your company? If it's your company, you should have at least a profit and loss account. That's why I say business unit in a bigger corporational environment. But it starts with an analysis to agree upon the problem. And if you want to agree upon the problem, the best way to do that is to visually represent what is going on in the company. And a recommendation there is to sit together with all the heads of departments, if you're looking at the company yourself, and let them draw a picture of what is actually going on in the company from order intake to order delivery. And best thing is to work from the customer back all the way to the suppliers. And the order intake. Take the order in, you've got the suppliers supplying their goods and services, you've got the inventory management, you've got the operations, you've got your sales and marketing departments, you've got finance, and in the end you've got distribution, maybe testing before distribution or quality, whatever, and then you deliver it. So first thing is make it visual. What I often use is I facilitate that people draw what is actually happening in their company on a big sheet of paper or different sheets of paper together, so they agree upon what's really happening in the company. And I ask them to visualize the different process steps through which the pieces of value, the products, services or the projects that you're delivering to your customer are running through. And then you also try to indicate what is the information flow. You've got the product flow, product, project, service flow, and you've got the information flow between the different steps that are happening in the company. Once you've done that, you need to make sure that you identify where is the bottleneck or the constraint or the one process step or one resource group where most of the time the things get stuck or reside most of the time of the total duration of your product, project or service delivery. In order to do that, the best thing also is to ask the people that are working on the different departments or procedures or process steps to identify with a red sticky note, for example. They can hand them out per person 3 red sticky notes and say, where do you feel the most pain? Where are the most delays? Where do you think the most waste is? Then people will put sticky notes, pardon me, sticky notes on those process steps that seem to be blocking the company the most from achieving more. The next step then is to let them decide where they should focus on. Should they focus on the red sticky notes which are, for example, close to distribution, close to the customer delivery, or should we look more upstream? Most of the time, so far all the time, my experience is that we want to focus on the most upstream process steps where the most sticky notes are, because these are very often the problems that are being created there or that surface there are very often the causes of the effects of other problems down the stream. So focus on the one most upstream. And then the next step is to decide together with those people, and especially from that process step where you identified most of the things get stuck, let people define what are good metrics, what are the metrics that drive the right behavior or would drive the right behavior. And in order to do that, if you don't know, ask your people, ask the people that are actually working there, what would be a good metrics to identify whether we are proactive, whether we solve problems quickly, whether we have less rework, these kind of behaviors that we want to see. And sometimes you can't count the number that you are looking for or the kind of behavior, but then ask the opposite question: what is the behavior we would like to see less from? And we can measure probably these kind of symptoms, and if they go down, the wanted behavior is going up because you've got less of that unwanted behavior or unwanted symptoms. Because in the end, behavior drives results. And like Dr. Eli Goldratt, one of my mentors, used to say, he said, tell me how you measure me. If you don't know how you measure me, then I even don't know how I will behave. Because the measures drive behavior. In general, there are no bad people. There's just bad metrics, bad policies under which we are living, and therefore it's driving sometimes irrational behavior, because in the end, if we're motivated to do one thing which may be in conflict with another thing of another department, we may build walls of distrust between each other, but in the end it's just a metric, or it's just a policy, or a conflicting policy that is driving us apart. And if you start to visualize these things and you start to surface those metrics and challenge them together, you may be light years ahead of most companies. In addition to that, if you have different metrics over different departments, make some of them, think about some of them, or surface some of them, which may be cross-functional, or you give the responsibility to the sales department, for example, to have on-time delivery in operations, and vice versa, on-time delivery from the operations to sales. So both of them are going to work together to achieve those metrics if they are measured that way. So this is an example of a visualization. It should not be a clean cut, nice value stream map with digital made on the computer that looks nice, because in the end what we want to see is how is the situation really right now before we start improving anything. And if it looks messy, well, that's good, because then at least we have for the first time a messy picture, allowing us to identify there where the most red areas or red effects or undesirable effects are generated. And therefore, we can then focus on those root cause problems, if you want, of leverage points of the company, and making sure everything else becomes much more smoother, and we can maximize the flow once we've launched some, how do you say, improvement actions or action bursts, like we call them here. So once you have got the current value stream map, which I showed before, then you can decide together to make a nice one. How would we like to have this process or this value stream map looking in the future after we have done everything we could to improve the whole situation? And in this situation, people came up with different action bursts in different areas in the value stream map. One of them was having a frequently asked database before any of the work came into the company, into the department. We're talking here about an IT department. And this IT department, once they had a frequently asked question database, were less interrupted by people asking the same questions time and time again to the different software developers. Once we had the frequently asked question database, this went down tremendously. In addition to that, we had a common contact, so if there were questions that were not in the frequently asked question database, people could access or write an email to the common contact, who would make a list of these questions and add it to the database of things to improve. After that, the department manager was able to prioritize all tasks depending on the capacity and the needs and the decisions, the strategic decisions of the company. Obviously, this was about a company that was supporting vessels like ships. They were developing software, navigation software in this case, for supply vessels, oil tankers, super yachts, and so on. So a vessel in operation had a higher priority, obviously, than a vessel not in operation or a new product development. But the prioritization of tasks was then done before anything went into the software development box. And in the software development box, we wanted to see what was actually happening. So we had to monitor these things and measure whether we were doing a good job or a bad job as a software development department. But to monitor it, we need to make it visual. And we also controlled the entry of tasks. Nothing came in unless something went out. And after building and testing, we were also checking and monitoring and measuring whether tests failures were feeding into the software development department again, or whether we could reduce this. So once these measures were in place, these action bursts were in place, we had a much better release. And so for each action burst, we said which kind of action we will do to monitor, to prioritize tasks, to have a common contact, to control and the entry of tasks, to have a frequently asked question frequently asked questions replied to in the fastest way possible, and to measure what we want to see happening. So these were the reasons or the actions and the throughputs that we were after, because we were looking for throughput and quality. So these two columns are explaining us how the different actions were helping for the throughput aspect or the quality aspect, or both. So that's, and how we start to measure it? Well, we start to measure it by bringing everybody in a stand-up meeting every morning, like 15 minutes, and we were able then also to abolish or delete or cancel a weekly meeting of 3 hours in the end of the week on Friday by just having this 15-minute meeting in the morning where people were standing around the board taking note of what was happening every day, the number of support requests, the number of things that were ready for build, that they were moving from one process basically to another, and we were also indicating whether there were red sticky notes, which means needed escalation, or yellow sticky notes, which means everything looks fine, but it could get into trouble. And this was quite in the beginning of the process. And the green ones, which was there in time, and they're being worked on. And they moved here. In this case, we used a Kanban board from being worked on to done before they were pulled by the people into the next step. So in the morning meeting, people said, this is what I've done. I'm okay, nothing to add, or this is what I've completed. I will pull in this work to my place now. So everybody knew who was doing what, where were things getting stuck, and what was the overall progress we did, and we took note of the performance here. So in the end, what was the result? Before we came there was no overview of tasks, there was no monitoring of current tasks, there was not sure that people were working on the right tasks, there was many support interruptions that led to low quality, low average throughput, 7 per week, and the average problem and improvements that were going out per week was 0.5. After that, we went to 5.3 problems and improvements that went out per week. That was a 960% improvement. The average throughput went to 11 per week, which is a 60% improvement. We have much higher quality and much less rework. The support interruptions went down by 47%, and people were always sure that they're working on the right tasks. There were no priority switches. There was a full monitor of the current task, and we had a full overview of the tasks. So a brief summary. What do we do in such a focused leverage improvement project? We agree on the common goal first. We list the pain points and define which ones are the most important ones, maybe on a Pareto principle or by votes, but making sure we have everything visible. We visualize the actual system and its main process steps with material and documentation flow. We identify the bottlenecks and the other constraints. We call of action the call of action brainstorming and assessment is something we did so that people can brainstorm about which actions should be put in place in order to achieve what exactly. And that was done cross-functional with the company's subject matter experts, not with us imposing anything, but it's a facilitating way. People know what they need to do, but we need to facilitate them to be able to do it. Then we developed action plans for each improvement initiative, and we guided them whenever there was a conflict. We facilitated conflict resolution. Then you implement, you have a feedback loop, and we closed out when we met the objectives. Here, the objective was to have a 20% improvement, but we had a 60% improvement in throughput and 960% in problem solving. So we definitely hit the mark there. What did we use there? We used many things because, basically I'm trained in Lean and TOC. I know a little bit of Six Sigma, and I'm constantly learning more about it. But it's not about coming with one tool or one concept and implement and imposing that upon the organization. We just see what is the continuous focused improvement we can do, what is the target and what's the opportunity, what is the target and what is the opportunity here. And if we combine the target with the opportunities, then we have a continuous focused improvement project going on. And in this case, we used control of the release of work, prioritization. We made sure there was full buy-in in every step that we took. We implemented some kind of drum buffer rope or simplified drum buffer rope and critical chain methodology for the whole project. And with Lean, there we used some Kanban. We eliminated overproduction. We applied the pool principle, we implemented Hayunka, value stream mapping, and process mining, while we were also taking into account tech times and focus on a reduction of the tech time on the bottlenecks. And this was for proactive scheduling. You see in the first column was for proactive scheduling. For standardized work, we used all these steps from TOC, or tools from TOC, from Lean and from Six Sigma. And for performance management from TOC, we used the layers of resistance to make sure people got on board. And we used TOC accounting metrics to make sure that the system as a whole was working and performing as we really wanted. Then also for Lean, we used visual management, KPI, SMART goals, and Hansei, and we used some shiny statistical engineering, regression analysis, and control charts. But the most important thing is we come there, we know TOC, but we work with the people, with the subject matter experts of the company, and we will see which tool we need to find which, once you have the overview and the visualization and the bottleneck identified of the company, you see what's happening, what is needed. Is it quality? Probably you need some Six Sigma solutions or tools. If it's efficiency, go into the Lean body of knowledge and decide which things you need where and when. Don't just impose a whole bunch of, or the full body of knowledge of Six Sigma, for example, when you mainly have an efficiency problem. So that is basically what we did in Module 4, or in a FLIP project, in a Focus Leverage Improvement project, which will help you to make sure that you can deliver upon the promises of your customer. Next week, we will go into selling your Mafia offer to make sure that you can capitalize on the fact that you build and have identified a true market need that you can fulfill in a factor of magnitude better than your competitors. They find it very hard or even impossible to copy, and you've built the integrity in your company behind it to make sure that you can cope with the demand by a Focus Leverage Improvement project. You can see, okay, now we've got this visualization. If we have 40, 50, 100% more demand coming in because we will promote our Mafia offer, how are we going to cope with that down the line so we can make sure we don't become a victim of our own success? And then, now that we are prepared, we can sell our irresistible, our Mafia offer to our market, and we will make sure we leverage on that additional value that we will bring to the market. But I will come back to that in the next module. I hope you enjoyed it, and I see you in at least let's say 7 days, the latest. Thank you for your attention.